and welcome to my podcast. I am Ronnie Whitman, and today I'm going to talk about how I got started as a writer. Well, it began on my trip to Altrincham, Cheshire, England, which is where book one, The Power of Love idea came from. When I walked this path that led you directly to Dunham Massey, it's like the backside of it, I had this feeling of being home, and when I looked around, I couldn't figure out why I felt that way. Did I have a connection to this place? Was there a past life connection? Anyways, joking aside, I do believe in past lives, especially after my research and reading Dr. Brian Weiss' books regarding past life regressions using hypnosis, which I highly recommend you read his books, and I also recommend you giving it a try. It was an interesting experience. I regressed to a time where I was a woman and I was saying goodbye to my what I believe was my husband, who was dressed in armor getting ready to go off to war. I also felt that it was the last time I saw him since he never returned, and the only way he wouldn't return was if he fell in battle. This is something I felt coming from this woman. The time I believe this took place was somewhere around circa 500 to 600, but I cannot be for sure. It's hard to say exactly. Okay, back to why I started writing my first book. After returning home, I ended up in the hospital with severe chest pain, believing I was having a heart attack, which is one of the most scariest times of my life. But after being taken to the Mayo Hospital and after they ran a series of tests, it turned out to be a severely diseased gallbladder, which I underwent surgery. Once I returned to work and sat at my desk, words started forming in my mind. They were so strong that I had to write them down. Okay, when I did this, first I had a little sticky pad, taking little notes here and there, and I started writing them on the sticky pad. Well, then I was into like 5, 6, 7 sticky pads, and it was like, okay, this is completely crazy. So then I started moving to a notepad. Well, it was just a mini notepad, not like a large notepad. So I was like, okay, this is getting crazy. I'm having all these notes and I have to take home with me. So I thought, okay, it might just be easier to open up a Word document, keep it on my desktop, and then write everything down. And then I can just email it to myself before I left work that day. Or I just leave it on my desktop until I'm ready to send it to myself. With the amount of words that were flowing, it was just more than I could possibly imagine. And after a time, I realized I was forming a story. Of course, I didn't know what kind of story it was going to be until it all came together. At first, I believe my story was complete at 50 pages. I know. Can you imagine? Crazy, right? Of course, then I had no idea what it took to write a book, let alone a novel. Who does? I mean, you hear of all these writers, and they write a lot of books and they have all this experience. But what it takes when you first start out, it is not an easy thing. So, anyways, this whole novel, the idea of a novel, I ended up putting it away for 2 years. Then one day I felt the need to pull it out and scratched everything I already wrote and started from the beginning. And the story that flowed through my mind it just was consistent. Come through. And it's like if I was working my regular job, I'd have to have a notepad and write these ideas as they came in and later transfer them to a Word document. So, and when I was at not working, I like to write. So yes, I was writing on a notepad before transferring my words to a Word document. This is something I actually still do today. I enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it. I keep a notepad near me, and anytime a a thought runs through my mind that has to do with one of my stories, or maybe even a new story, which has happened, I jot it down. When I started forming the story, The Power of Love, I would discuss it with friends and coworkers. It was through them that gave me the idea to bring the past into the present by having my characters in book 2, Love Across Time, going through memories of a past life. But I wasn't sure how to do this without making the book, about making the 2 books larger. So although book 2, Love Across Time, was supposed to be part of book 1, but with the amount of pages I had already created for book 1, The Power of Love, it was approaching over 200 pages. So I was just like, okay, if I do these together, it's going to be a very large book. So, I came up with the idea of doing 2 books. At the time, it was just going to be the 2 books, in which I used parts in book 2, Love Across Time. I used parts of my personal life experiences and people I knew and put it into one of my characters. I read that a lot of writers use personal experiences along with people and places they met or been to. I also realized how hard it was to write a book, how to put together characters, dialogues, and being careful with tenses. That was very difficult because sometimes you're writing things and you start writing in the in the present tense, realizing it has to be in the past tense. That took a lot of training for me, by the way. It was not easy, and more than once I had to rewrite the book, and it seemed each time I did, I added more. Once I was done, or believed I was done, when I would read through my novel looking for any gaps that needed to be filled so the story flowed well, I would add more. My first book being over 400 pages, so imagine if I put book 2 together, which was over 300 pages. Yeah, it would have been a pretty big book. So you can imagine what it would have been like, right? Okay. Too much for my first novel, let alone an unknown author. A lot of places when you're wanting to try to get out publishers, an unknown author, they want no more than 90,000 words, and they don't want it to be big. So that was very difficult considering my first book being over 165,000 words. I mean, yes, I could have broken them up. I could have broken book 1 up to 2 parts, having book 1 being part 1, part 2, and then going on to book 2 and everything. But you know what? It was very, very hard for me to find any literary agent who would willing to accept me as a unknown new author. So after years of trying, I decided to give up on that and decided to do self-publishing through Amazon. Okay, anyways, let's kind of get back here a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about how I came up with the names of my books. Well, since the first book was all about love, a special and rare love of 2 young people who believed to love the way they did could only have come from the power of God. So what better name than to call it The Power of Love? For Love Across Time, well, why not? It's about 2 souls who are reborn in a different time, going through different life changes and coming to a time when they started recalling memories of a life to when they connected, the past merged with the present, thus Love Across Time. Now, a Highlander's love. Not to give away too much, as there is a twist in this story. This is about a Highlander and the woman who he was betrothed to. By the way, this word is very difficult for me. Betrothed, I always get it wrong, so forgive me. Have a little laugh, it's alright. Who was Elizabeth in a previous life, and no, he was not the one who was Robert. That ended up being another man who became the Lord of Dunham Massey Castle in that life. Now, Lord of Dunham Massey Castle is a part of book 1, obviously, and also a little bit part of book 2. Anyways, going on. I think I will leave it at that. Anyways, I called it A Highlander's Love because the story is about him, not so much her. You have to read more to know more. Okay, One Heart, Two Souls. Well, I named this so because the male character has to cut half his heart out and send it through an ether to find the soul who will possess it when she is born. A love of a druid priestess. Well, I think that says it all. A man falls in love with a priestess. Of course, there is more to it, but I'm not willing to give too much away. Not yet. And a wizard's princess. Well, I think that this doesn't need much explanation. Well, these are my 6 books in the series called A Contract Written in Gold. I will explain my standalone books later when I get into that section of my books. Okay, moving forward. After I completed book 1, The Power of Love, I started writing book 2, Love Across Time, as you already know. Other book ideas started flowing through my mind to the point I would keep a notepad near me to write the words down as they came to me. I would end up with bits and pieces of storylines for each book. Book 3, A Highlander's Love, which I already gave you a little bit of, it takes place in the Scottish Highlands during the 17th century. Book 4, One Heart, Two Souls, which takes place on a planet far away thousands of millennia ago with a species I called merpeople, which are half human and half fish. Yep, mermaids and merman people. Hello. Okay, anyways, book 5, Love of a Druid Priestess, which is about the original Druids who are from the realm of light, who bestowed their power to one Druid priestess of the land who was pure of heart and soul. And the way they do this, well, let's say I decided to add the possibility of where the idea of vampires came from. Oh, that's so much fun when I wrote this, and I actually can't wait to continue on with that story because to me, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Anyways, moving forward. Book 6, The Wizard's Apprentice. Okay, is when a wizard finds a child, a girl, who lost both her parents when the Vikings slaughtered her whole village and bestowed all his powers and knowledge when he decided it was time to rest. Power that would later return in her future life, which there might be a book 7. I am not sure yet. I actually thought of book 7 as I was kind of making my notes for this podcast. So, we'll see how that one goes. Well, with all of these ideas, I finally had to stop and look up and said, okay, whoever's given me these ideas, please slow down because I cannot write more than one book at a time. I am new at this. Okay? I mean, come on, I'm not experienced. I mean, literally, after I finished book 1, during my time writing book 2, all these new storylines were flowing through my mind. Literally, I had to pull out a notepad and write these things down, and then I would type them up later and then think of names and different stories as they come, as I already told you what I came up with the names. And yes, I've started each and every one of these, which is going to take time to complete them. Okay, anyways, moving forward. Well, as I've already told you, I ended up with a total of 6 books in the stories series, with a possible 7 that I called A Contract Written in Gold. Why did I call it A Contract Written in Gold? Well, because in this book, A Love of a Druid Priestess, the couple ends up meeting the Fae Queen, and the contract written in gold ends up being her idea. I'm not going to give too much away about that, but we're going to leave it at that. Okay, 3 out of the 6 series were already published on Amazon. So basically, The Power of Love, Love Across Time, and A Highlander's Love have already been published on Amazon. So if you're interested in checking them out, please go to Amazon, search in there Ronnie Whitman, and you should pull them all up. You can also go to my website, ronniewhitman.com, and you can see all my books and what I have working. And you can also get to the Amazon site to purchase them as well. Okay, so these two characters that are basically in all these books, souls were connected. A love that was so strong that they would always be drawn to find each other in every life they were born into. I will go into detail my first 3 books. So that were published. So I'm going to go into details of my first 3 books that were published on Amazon. I will then explain my other books in this series along with other books that are standalone books. However, you can always visit my website, as I stated earlier, ronniewhitman.com, for the full list and description of these books, along with links to purchase them for my first 3 books that I published through Amazon. Gotta plug that in. Come on now. Trying to sell books here. Okay, moving forward. I couldn't believe these book ideas, stories am creating, to me were amazing stories. I mean, I was amazed. When I finished book 1, I was so tickled pink with how it turned out. And then when I did book 2, I was even more tickled pink about how it turned out, let alone book 3. All right, anyways. I'm excited, obviously. Who wouldn't be when you went from never writing a book to writing 3 books and have more working? So, anyways, let's move forward. Okay, it wasn't until I published my books and had people I knew give me great reviews, but more importantly, people I didn't know who gave me great reviews. It came across exactly how I wanted my stories to come across. Now, although my books are not perfect, I did receive and appreciate suggestions and corrections that were given to me, and I plan to make these corrections. However, I have not yet had the time, as I have been working a lot in my full-time job. Yep, gotta work a full-time job if I'm gonna make some money to keep the bills paid. Got to make the money somewhere, right? Until my books start selling. However, I know I need to get it done soon. You can also see these reviews on my website as well. So, please, check out my books and let me know what you think. I would love to hear what you think. Good or bad, all comments are welcome. Also, I do plan on doing some reading of my books, but I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do that. So, if you have any suggestions, please let me know. All suggestions are welcome. Okay, that is it for now. Thank you for listening to my podcast. Again, I am Ronnie Whitman. Have a good day.